one thing I find ChatGPT to be just immensely beneficial for is my own education, learning about different things and helping myself, whether it's in a work environment or in a personal environment. And we're going to talk about in the work environment around some soft skills, and we're going to give some examples here. But think about areas of your own improvement where ChatGPT might be able to help educate yourself or give you some ideas for, personal improvement, for example. So let's look at a couple of soft skills. So this one we're going to be in soft skills. The next lesson we're going to talk about some hard skills. So some real technical, maybe some technical type skills as an example. But this is soft skills. So let's start with talking about critical thinking. We'll talk a little bit about oral communication as an example, and then we'll wrap up with like leading a meeting, just as for some examples. So critical thinking is one of the most important things out there right now for businesses and folks that are hiring. So if we look at ChatGPT, and we could just say, well, how can I get better at critical thinking, right? Which gets into decision making and all that too as well. So, this is a really broad type thing. It's going to be pulling from lots of resources. So it might take a little extra time. As you can see, it took like an extra, 1 second, 2 seconds. I mean, isn't that amazing? I mean, if you're not like at this point saying, oh my goodness, just keep going because we got more, it'll be great, right? So then it talks about, here are ways you can, practical ways you can improve your critical thinking skills. And it gets into that, as far as introspection, stuff like that. And let's say I'm reading this, take the time to consider multiple viewpoints and all that. And let's say it's giving good information. But let's say I'm also, I've been told by my boss that sometimes I have, in biases in my decision making, right? So, I could say, well, what is that? What are some common biases in decision making? Kind of related decision making, kind of related to critical thinking, right? We got that. But, bias, not in this case that a person would be, if they were told that they're a racist or don't like a certain gender or whatever. It's just more the scientific type biases, and you'll see this coming up here, like anchoring bias here, for example, when people rely heavily on the first piece of information they receive when making a decision. So if you're taking in lots of information, the first piece might be, that's the answer based on that. That's an anchoring bias. But you can see things like there's these different biases, loss aversion, like when you've already put money into something, you're motivated not to, you don't want to lose, or more about, you don't want to lose more, you don't want to take risks, right? So these are examples of like, okay, here are some decision-making biases, and you can look at this and say, do I have any of these, of these biases, right? And what that might mean, what is, confirmation bias? Like, I might say, okay, that sounds like me. Maybe I say, could you expand on confirmation bias and provide an example? I like it. Sometimes I ask it to provide an example because that helps my learning when I see what's an example of this. Like I read it, I understand it, but let me read it some more in more detail. This is the expanding on it. And could you provide me an example, right? So it's going to, it's going to confirm what it is, and then it's going to give me an example of this too. Actually talking about weight loss or whatever. So I might want to ask about, provide an example, let's say for accountants or in the work environment or whatever. And then also why this can be a problem. So, this is an example of where I'm educating myself, let's say around critical thinking and decision making. Let's start up a new chat real quickly, a couple other ones. Let's say I want to be better at, communication, right? Let's say with oral communication, I might say, what are some great tips if nervous about, what do you think I'm going to say? Public speaking, right? Public speaking. Something most people are nervous about. You might have put in your own thing. If you did, just say, go back and use ChatGPT and put it in for whatever makes you. But here's a few things you can try if you're nervous about public speaking, right? And it talks about practice with a friend, choose the topic you're interested in, use visual aids, take deep breaths. I'm a deep breath guy, positive self-talk, focus on your audience, all this stuff. So here's a nice bullet point list of things that if you're nervous, you can just look at this and just say, oh, I could do some of these to help me with my oral communication skills. And sometimes I'll answer with a, nice little make you feel good, right? Finally, remember the more you practice, the more comfortable and confident you'll become, right? This could be an outline for a whole course even. So there's an idea of there. And let me leave you with one last one. Like, let's say, start a new chat here. What are some, best practices when leading a meeting. Okay? Wow, that was some number 1 typing poorness there. Here are some tips for leading a meeting, right? So if you do not have much experience with leading meetings, this really kind of laid it out for you how to lead maybe your first meeting, right? And then this is just tips that you can build on, like, and then you can ask it more to follow up more and different tools in there. Let's say I want to facilitate discussion, encourage participation from all attendees. Well, that sounds nice, but how do I do that? How do I, in a meeting, copy paste, facilitate discussion, encourage participation from all attendees, right? So now it'll build on this and give me some strategy. So you see how I'm educating myself, talks about independent questions and what those are, encourage people to share their opinions, inclusive language, blah, blah, blah. And then you can ask it more to expand on all this some more, or you could ask it for examples. So those are some examples of, soft skills that you can ask it. And think about what do you maybe want to improve in terms of a soft skill. Start using ChatGPT to start educating yourself as well. Now let's start talking about some more technical or even some hard skills that you can use ChatGPT as well, like how to do a certain thing in Excel or programming or something, right?